Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. Welcome to the best of the best, r/EntitledParents, where our first post of the day is submitted by user/thebarker26. Note, I'm from the UK, so if any ages, terminology, or anything seems off to you, that's why. From ages 4 to 10, I had a group of friends who all lived on my cul-de-sac. All of our parents were friends, and we were very close. Big sleepovers together, Boy Scouts, and etc. However, when I turned 11 and went off to high school, I was forced to make new friends, seeing as none of the people from my street went to the same one as me. Needless to say, we drifted apart. The problem with this was, just before starting high school, at the height of our friendship, my mother had planned a holiday with EM, Fiona, and her son, who we'll call Mike, for 14 months in advance. It was a non-refundable trip, and seeing as both our mothers were single parents, it wasn't like they had cash to burn. So instead of wasting the holiday due to a little awkwardness, we decided to go ahead with the 2 weeks in Gran Canaria and use that time to revitalize our friendships. The changes that occur from 11 to 13 are obviously drastic. Still, I was optimistic about the whole thing. I kind of missed Mike and was curious to see what he was like. With all that in mind, here we go. Mike and Fiona stayed over at our house the night before the holiday, and Mike and I got reacquainted very quickly. One thing I noticed was how he hadn't changed at all. Everyone I knew was sliding into the 2000s emo mosher goth culture. But Mike still looked like his mum dressed him, and he didn't seem too interested in talking about music either. I can't quite describe it properly, but he just didn't seem like a teenager. He seemed like the 11-year-old boy I last spoke with. But I didn't think too much of it. You don't really need many things in common with someone when you're going to a resort with a water park across the road, right? So we're at the airport, and after going through security, etc., my mum lets me off my metaphorical leash and tells me to go eat wherever I want, and gives me a time to meet back with her at a cafe. I ask Mike if he's going to come with me to a burger place, and he looks at Fiona, who shakes her head side to side. She doesn't say anything, but there's an awkward few seconds where I look between her and my mum. And my mum just kind of shrugs. Me to Fiona, "It's only around the corner, we can bring the food back here." "And what if something happens? I think it's best if Mike stays with me." My mum goes to say something to Fiona, but Fiona quickly shuts her down with a firm no. Anyway, I go and get myself a meal with the loose change my mum gave me, and since I felt kind of weird about everything, I bought Mike a large meal with my own money. I go back to everyone and hand the meal over to Mike, and once again, he looks at his mum, who sighs. "What's this? A cheeseburger meal?" "Absolutely not. Throw it away. I don't want that stuff anywhere near you." There's a long pause, and suddenly I feel guilty for doing what I assumed was a nice thing. I was also a little bit angry that I'd spent money on that meal, but my mum is vegetarian and I couldn't eat 2 meals, so whatever. I proceed to sit next to my mum, and she reassures me I didn't do anything wrong. There was some noticeable tension in the air, and we continue with our trip. Just before we get on the plane, Mike mentions something about wanting the window seat to Fiona. So Fiona suddenly grabs me at the gate by my wrist and tells me to let Mike on first, so there are no arguments over it. Again, this annoyed me, as I would have happily let him have the seat if he asked. I let my mum know that Fiona was starting to annoy me as we got on the plane, but my mum said Fiona was probably stressed from traveling and it'd be fine once we got there. The next thing I know, we're in the air, and after 5 minutes of staring at his phone, not out the window, Mike falls asleep. My mum and Fiona are behind us. Fiona is reading a book with her headphones in, ignoring my mum. Being the extrovert that my mum is, and easily bored, it didn't take her long to start chatting with a couple who were in the next aisle. They also happened to be staying at the same resort, and had 4 kids of their own who were all early mid-teens. Those kids were in the seats next to Mike and I, so naturally I strike up a conversation with them and we all become fast friends. This was a kind of tradition, seeing as I'm an only child and introverted, so my mum always made friends with other parents with kids for me to talk to. Several times during this bonding experience, Fiona would pull her headphones out and ask my mum to keep it down because she couldn't focus on her book, or tap me on the shoulder and make a shh gesture through the gaps of the seats because she didn't want me waking up Mike. In the middle of the day, she even asked me why I couldn't go to sleep too. And when I said I wasn't tired, she rolled her eyes at me. I was still a little angry at her, so I pretty much ignored this. Before we land, my mum makes plans to meet her new friends at the resort bar later that night, and I make plans to meet her kids at the same time. Of course, I'd be bringing Mike along too. The flight from UK to Gran Canaria is only about 4 hours, and we were arriving at midday, so jet lag wasn't going to be an issue. If anything, my mum and I were pretty buzzed. Fiona, on the other hand, was not. The room we got was a twin family room. 2 double beds and a pull-out sofa, as it was cheaper than getting 2 double rooms and let us bump our trip from 10 days to 14. I guess we assumed Fiona and Mike wouldn't want to spend the first night at the resort cramped up in the room. But the moment my mum told Fiona that we'd made plans to go out, she got angry. Also, she insisted Mike sleep in her bed rather than Mike and I share the sofa bed and our mums get a double bed each. Not a huge deal, just thought it was odd. And what time will you be coming back? I don't want to be woken up after having flown all day. Again, 4 hours on a full night's rest. Well, why don't you come with us? I thought you'd want to check the place out. Because I'm tired. Honestly, it'll hit you the moment you go out tonight, so you might as well just stay and get a good night's rest. I don't want to be stuck in the room all night. Come on, let's go have a drink and see what's on. No, this is my holiday and I'm going to do things at my pace. The holiday was split 50-50. My mum and I decided to go anyway, and when the time came to leave the room, I noticed Mike sat on the edge of his mum's bed sulking. He obviously wanted to come with us rather than stay in the room, as there were arcade machines, games, music, and a show going on right outside. Why don't you come with us? Once again, Mike looks to his mum, who does her trademark sigh. He's tired. Do you want to come or do you want to go to sleep? Fiona shoots up, seemingly offended. Don't ignore me. I just told you he's tired. At this point, my teenage angst was boiling over. I'd spoken back to people for far less and had only bitten my tongue when she grabbed my wrist because I didn't want the holiday to be awkward. Thankfully, my mum could see that I was about to go off and stepped in. I'll watch Mike, don't worry, and we'll be back by 11. Fiona pauses for a moment, then says, 10:30. So we go out and have a great time. Mike was a tad awkward around the other teens, but I made sure to keep him included in everything. I even shared some money with him and told him to pay for a round of games on some of the machines to break the ice with the other kids. We got in at midnight, but Fiona was sound asleep and she didn't have anything to say when she woke up. Until breakfast. At the buffet, Fiona spends way too much time arguing with the waiters about wanting more options. And Mike lets slip that we 1. Went to the arcade with the other kids, 2. Got back to the room at midnight, and 3. The oldest of the teens, who was 16 I think, had 1 beer over the course of the night. He does this rather innocently in conversation with me, excitedly recounting the events as our mums chat. But Fiona's mouth drops the second she overhears. She flips out. She tells my mum she endangered her son by letting him wander off alone, in a group of 6, in a resort with security and adult supervision inside the little arcade that was basically attached to the main lobby. And she makes it clear he isn't to leave her side for the rest of the trip. If she doesn't go, he can't. End of story. After another tense moment, both my mum and I apologized. My mum did try to see it from her perspective, and they seemed to reconcile by dinner. Then, as we're all lounging by the pool before the sun sets, the siblings come up to Mike and I and invite us to go back to the arcade with them. I immediately say yes, but Fiona makes it clear she isn't moving, which means Mike can't go. At this point, I'm done with Fiona, but I take a moment to look at Mike, who is obviously upset, and I tell the other kids I'd catch them later that night at the arcade. EM seemed to have opinions about this too, saying something like, playing games too much isn't good for you. but I ignored her. I then invite Mike into the pool with me, seeing as there isn't anything else to do. And Fiona has a problem with this too, because it's too late and we'll be eating soon. Yes, she controlled when all 4 of us ate. If my mother or I tried to sneak off for a snack, she'd complain that we'd be ruining our appetite for the dinner we had to have as a collective every night. I spent the rest of the day bored out of my mind with Mike, who, to be honest, wasn't much fun. Night comes around again and Fiona comes out this time, but she sits at the bar and still won't let Mike leave her side, meaning he has to sit next to her and watch her get drunk on wine. But even that has its drama. We'd gone to an all-inclusive, again for money reasons, and they usually allowed you to drink alcohol for free as long as it's house. If you want anything branded or a cocktail, you pay. Fiona didn't seem to like this, and continually complained that the house wine tasted of pee, quite loudly, especially when the barman was refilling her glass. After listening to her ramble for 20 minutes, I was done. I wanted to go to have fun with the other teens regardless if Mike could come or not. So after I speak with my mum, she insists I not feel guilty about leaving Mike, as that was on Fiona. She tells me it's my holiday too, and I should do what I want to have a good time. So that's what I do. For the next 5 or 6 days, I spend pretty much every second with the other kids, but I always invited Mike. I asked him and his mother every day if he wanted or could come with me, and she said no every time. I'd even ask several times if I kept running into them, but then Fiona would just get annoyed at me for bothering her. I just wanted to make it clear that Mike was more than welcome to hang out with us. This all came to a head by the time Saturday rolled around. There was a deal with the resort to get a 3-day pass at the water park across the street if you booked a certain package, which we had. My mum and I had asked Fiona every day which day she wanted to go to the water park, as we wanted to spend the entire day there and get our money's worth. But she never seemed interested. So when the other family with the 4 teens said they were going that Saturday, I asked if I could go with them instead. EM took issue with this.
No, you should come with us. We're on holiday together, you know.
Well, do you want to go today?
No, not today. I don't want to go today.
Okay, well, I do want to go today.
You should wait until Mike can go. Otherwise, what was the point in coming together?
Then let him come with us.
I said no. A little patience wouldn't kill you.
This is my holiday, and I'm going to do things at my pace. Tensions are obviously rising again, so my mum says that I can go today and that she'll give me her pass when Mike and Fiona go, so Mike will still have a friend to go with. I pull Mike aside before I head off with the other family and ask him to convince Fiona to let him come, and the other kids' parents even offered to speak with her, saying they'll keep an eye on Mike. But nothing worked. She kept saying no and was very rude to the other parents. I don't recall the conversation very well, but it was something along the lines of,
"For all I know, you're a family of serial killers, so please refrain from talking to me or my child."
The family weren't impressed. So I go, I have a fantastic time, and I get back to the room at around 7 p.m, shortly after the park closed. Once I finished getting changed, Mike and Fiona enter.
Did you have a good time with your little friends?
Yes.
Really? 'Cause I thought I saw you earlier on your own by the pool. Thought they might have ditched you.
No, I was at the park all day. Did you have a good time reading your book? Fiona just grunts at me and makes her way back to her bed. I wish she'd been there. Kieran, one of the other teens, did a backflip off a diving board. It was so cool. Fiona then, under her breath, mocking me.
It was so cool.
By this point, I was super irritated with her. This woman in her late 30s had been treating her teenage son like a baby the entire holiday. She'd complained that all the all-inclusive food and drinks were trash whenever we had meals together, making it impossible to enjoy whatever time I spent in her company. And now she was making fun of me. I'd had enough. Is there a problem? Fiona mumbles something. Because if there's a problem, I think you should just say it so we can get on with our holiday. Before she even turns around, Fiona launches into a tirade about how I'm a spoiled, selfish brat that has abandoned her son and ruined his holiday. In her mind, his sulking and being bored is down to me not sulking and being bored with him. She tells me I've been dragged up, not brought up, and that my mother should have done a better job. When I try to reason with her, which, to be honest, only lasted 5 seconds because I was getting very angry, and ask what's the harm in Mike spending some time with people our own age, she goes off about drugs and alcohol and abduction and all sorts of things. Like, I get you want your 13-year-old to stay safe, but everywhere we went was heavily secured. Not to mention these Canary Island resorts are ridiculously British. Most people that work or visit there are from the UK. So I had no idea where this foreign fear came from, and if she truly thought the place was a danger, why book it to begin with? Anyway, being 13, I quickly devolve into cursing at her. I don't hold back at her. I just get plain nasty with her. I'm not proud of it, and she used my language and attitude as "this proves I'm right" argument. But I was beyond caring. By the way, this all takes place in about 5 minutes, and just as we really to start to go at it. After she's insulted my mother's parenting numerous times, the bathroom door swings open, and out comes my mum. She'd been in there the entire time, and she'd heard everything. At first, I think I'm in trouble for my language, but to my surprise, my mum doesn't say a word to me. Instead, she goes off at Fiona like I've never seen her go off before. Fiona is pretty much silent through this whole ordeal. From the second my mum starts yelling at her, she buries her head in a book in the corner of the room and doesn't look away for a solid minute or two. Then Mike, who understandably didn't like seeing his mum getting yelled at, suddenly turns to my mum and shoves her. He doesn't say anything, he doesn't try to calm the situation or even just defend his mother with words. He shoves my mum's a good few meters across the room. FYI, my mum is an amputee. She only has one arm. Obviously, I would have reacted negatively if she had two and he'd shoved her, but I think it definitely added to my reaction. Fiona, upon seeing this, says during the stunned silence,
"Thank you, Michael."
To be honest, at this point, all I was running on was pure rage, so I walk right up to Mike, punch him between the eyes as hard as I can, then listen to Fiona wail as I storm out the room. My mum yells at me as I leave, but when she finds me by the side of a pool 10 minutes later and tells me off for what I've done, she has a guilty grin on her face. The worst thing about this was we still had to share a room for another week. There was obviously no way of reconciling that incident, but Fiona did make Mike apologize to my mother in return for me apologizing to both Fiona and Mike. Funnily enough, Fiona didn't apologize to anyone. Then Fiona went as far as to suggest Mike should get a 3 shot at me because I'd punched him. So I suggest I get a 3 shot at Fiona because Mike had shoved my mum and another argument broke out. Needless to say, we never spoke to Fiona or Mike again, not even while we shared the room, not on the plane home, not when we collected our luggage. We even got separate taxis to the street we all lived on. My mum and I did have a great time with the other family though. And I mean, I just see so much wrong with the mother in this story. Like at the start, I thought, okay, some of these things are sort of understandable, it doesn't seem so bad, but towards the end, it just really takes a turn for the worst. And judging by the way Mike reacted at the end, his mum's behavior is rubbing off on him. Which isn't good, but I guess he knows no other way really. And that's just sad that there's kids out there getting raised this way. Alright everyone, that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, then make sure to subscribe to the channel for Reddit videos every second day, and leave a comment telling me your favorite part or your own entitled parent stories. But with that said, that is it from me for today. I hope you all enjoyed, and all I want to do is see you all here next time. See you later, guys.